When my wife flirted with her coworker in front of me, she called me insecure. I decided to leave, and that same night I set in motion the cold revenge she never imagined. Hey Reddit, my name is Oliver, I am 35 years old. I married Eleanor when I was 26 and she was 24. She had just finished graduate school and was starting her first job. I worked as a financial analyst with a stable salary and a decent apartment, the kind of man parents usually consider a good match. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, and ended up having the typical church wedding surrounded by family and friends. The first years of our marriage were not like a movie, but they were calm and everything seemed solid. Over time, I understood that I fit exactly what she was looking for, someone responsible, predictable, and who would never ask too many questions, a reliable partner always willing to cook for her when she had long shifts, always believing whatever explanation she gave. But for weeks something in her had changed. Her behaviors, small at first, became impossible to ignore. She started leaving her phone face down on any surface, and when she got home she would go straight to the shower, when before she usually threw herself on the couch to rest. She talked almost every day about a guy from her marketing team named Chaim, and she mentioned him so often that it became obvious. When your wife mentions the same man 15 times in 3 days, you notice. And when she starts working late every Tuesday and every Thursday, getting home between 8 and 9 at night, you definitely notice. Even so, I stayed silent, convincing myself it must be work stress. Everything escalated at a barbecue organized by her department head in a huge house in the northern area of Phoenix. Eleanor spent an hour getting ready, trying on different outfits and doing her makeup as if she were going to a gala. I put on jeans and a polo shirt. We traveled in separate cars because, according to her, she planned to stay a bit longer to help with the cleanup. As soon as we arrived in the garden, not even a minute had passed before I knew exactly where things were heading. Eleanor walked through the door and immediately spotted Chaim. She murmured that she would go greet her team and practically walked straight toward him. Chaim was exactly what you would imagine, mid-30s, expensive haircut, gym posture, and the energy of a salesman who needs everyone to know it. He had that air of someone who dominates conversations effortlessly, holding a drink in one hand and gesturing widely with the other while talking about how he had closed a big account. My wife lit up the moment she saw him, and in less than 5 seconds she was already touching his arm. During the next 2 hours I watched her repeat the same pattern over and over, exaggerated laughter, brushing his forearm, leaning in too much to hear every word, even using that fake giggle she used when we first met and she was trying to impress me. I tried joining the conversation 4 times, and each time she interrupted me or changed the subject as if I were a stranger intruding where I didn't belong. When I suggested going to check out the food table, she threw me a look of annoyance, as if I were a child interfering in adult conversations. Then another coworker from the team arrived, and as soon as Eleanor saw her, she wasted no time introducing Chaim in detail, talking about his promotion, his new commercial territory, and his recent achievements. Then she pointed at me and said, "And this is my husband." That was it, not even my name or my profession, just my husband, as if I were another piece of furniture in the garden. I walked away and got a drink, standing near the fence while watching her behave like a single woman. Now she was touching his shoulder, and they were looking at something on his phone while she laughed uncontrollably. Little by little the others in the group drifted away, surely sensing the obvious tension. After another hour of enduring that scene, I decided to provoke a reaction. I approached and told her I was thinking of going home because I had to wake up early the next day. She acted as if I had said the dumbest thing in the world. "Why don't you get another drink or talk to someone else?" "I'd prefer to talk to you," I replied. That was when she stopped pretending. "I'm in the middle of a conversation. If it bothers you that I'm being social, you should think about why it makes you so uncomfortable." Even Chaim looked uncomfortable. "No, it doesn't bother me that you're being social," I explained calmly. "It bothers me that you're flirting." Eleanor crossed her arms, offended. "I'm not flirting, it's networking. If you can't handle it, the door is right there." And she pointed to the garden gate with a defiant smile. I looked at the gate, then at her, and then back at the gate. "You know what, you're right." I took out my keys and began walking. Behind me I heard her voice saying, "Wait, where are you going?" I didn't respond. I walked through the gate, got into my car, and drove off. In the rearview mirror I saw her standing still with her mouth slightly open while Chaim looked like he wanted to evaporate from the planet. My phone started buzzing as soon as I hit the highway, non-stop notifications. I didn't open any. I got home, poured myself a drink, and sat on the couch before checking them. 25 messages, all from Eleanor. The first ones were indignation. What was that? Everyone asked where you were. It was embarrassing. Then came the shift to a worried tone. Can we talk, please? Are you seriously not going to answer? An hour later I heard her car parking outside. The front door slammed so hard the frames vibrated. She entered the living room like a storm. What's wrong with you? She demanded. I took another slow sip. Nothing's wrong with me. You said the door was there, so I used it. You know perfectly well that wasn't what I meant. It sounded pretty clear to me. You pointed at the door and told me to use it if I couldn't handle your networking, and I used it exactly as you recommended. She started pacing furiously, insisting that I had embarrassed her in front of her coworkers, that she had to lie and say I felt unwell. Why didn't you tell them the truth? I asked. Why would I make myself look like a terrible wife? I let out a small disbelieving laugh. And spending 3 hours flirting with Kayam while your husband watches, what does that make you look like? She turned red. I wasn't flirting. You're unbearable with your insecurities. It's networking, professional relationships. Oh really? I replied, and since when does touching another man's arm every 30 seconds count as a work meeting? I left her speechless, but only for a few seconds. Then she resumed her speech about how controlling I supposedly was, repeating that healthy couples trust each other, that I needed to work on my jealousy, that she had done nothing wrong. But by that point I had already seen enough. That's not what I meant, but every time I tried to join the conversation, you cut me off as if my presence was a nuisance. I watched her face turn red. You're twisting everything, she accused. Oh really? Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were embarrassed that I existed. That's absurd. Right, because when I pointed out what you were doing, you yourself showed me the way out of the house. She huffed indignantly. Do you know what your problem is? She said. You don't trust me. A healthy marriage requires trust. You're right, trust is essential, but it is earned, not demanded. So you don't trust me? I stared at her for a long moment. Should I? My question hung in the air between us. For the first time that night, she had no answer. She simply turned around and walked out of the kitchen. I heard her footsteps going up the stairs and then the soft sound of the bedroom door closing. That night I slept in the guest room. The next morning my phone began ringing before dawn. By morning, Eleanor had activated her family defense squad. During the night her sister Sophia left a message and her mother did the same, then Sophia again. I got dressed and went downstairs. She was already in the kitchen pretending to be worried while talking on the phone. I don't know what's gotten into him lately, he's so controlling, so jealous. Last night he made a huge scene because I was talking with a colleague about work topics. I poured myself coffee and leaned against the doorframe. No, of course I wasn't flirting, she continued saying, you know how I am, I was just being friendly, but he acted as if I had done something terrible. When she saw me, she lowered her voice. Listen, I have to go. Yes, I think he should get help, something emotional must be happening. She hung up and turned to me with an exaggeratedly cheerful tone. Good morning, the coffee is freshly made. Thanks. I was thinking, she said with artificial softness, maybe we should talk to someone. It could help us work through your trust issues. My trust issues? Yes, it would be good for you to speak with a professional. I almost laughed. You want me to go to therapy because you flirted with another man? I want us to improve our communication. I heard you perfectly, you told me the door was right there. Her phone vibrated, she looked at the screen and immediately smiled. It's my mother, she's very worried about us. She answered without hesitation and instantly repeated the same distorted version of events, the same victim act, the same speech about my supposed unhealthy jealousy. I finished my coffee in silence and went to the garage to organize tools. I needed space to think. Eleanor was applying her usual script, take control of the narrative before anyone else, turn any disagreement into an attack against her, paint the other person as the problem. Later my phone rang again, an unknown number. It was Andrew, my brother-in-law. Sophia had called him worried. I explained briefly that Eleanor spent 3 hours flirting with a guy and that when I mentioned it, she pointed to the door. He hesitated. Sophia said you got mad because Eleanor was networking, that's her official version. Then Andrew tried to smooth things over, saying Eleanor had always been sociable, that she didn't have bad intentions, that that's just how she was, and maybe I could be a bit more understanding. She's quite upset, the whole family is. Andrew, I responded, if Sophia spent 3 hours at a party ignoring you while flirting with another man, and then pointed you to the door when you complained, what would you do? There was a long silence. No, that's different. How? Eleanor is simply very friendly. Sure, I said, very convenient. I hung up and continued organizing the workbench, already thinking about the next steps, because to me it was clear, this marriage was already broken. She just hadn't noticed it yet. 20 minutes later her father called. Bernard also wanted to know what had happened. According to him, Eleanor was very distressed. He mentioned that I said she pointed me to the exit of the house. I asked. Silence. He said I was being unreasonable about the coworker. I replied, interesting interpretation, let me tell you another one. Your daughter spent 3 hours flirting with another man while ignoring me, and when I mentioned it she suggested I leave, so I left. Another silence, even longer. I know Eleanor, she said, she is social, she always has been. Being social is one thing, what happened last night was something completely different. No, aren't you being too sensitive, Bernard? If your wife spent 3 hours touching another man's arm and acting like you didn't exist, would you think you were being sensitive? The final pause was the longest. No, I wouldn't think that. Then you understand my point. Yes, between you and me, her mother has been telling me for years that I let her get away with too much, maybe now it's catching up. I appreciate your honesty. The rest of the day I spent preparing for the inevitable. These were plans one does not announce, only executes. Eleanor returned home around 6 with takeout food, acting as if nothing had happened. She asked me about my day and talked about a show. We had dinner, and I pretended everything was normal, but mentally I was already far away. A few days later she greeted me with a completely different attitude. She was no longer defensive. She seemed genuinely remorseful. Can we talk? She asked. We are talking, I replied while sitting at the table. She sat across from me. The barbecue thing was a mistake, I got carried away with the networking idea and didn't think about how it could affect you or how it looked. It was wrong. I didn't react, I just watched her. And I shouldn't have said that thing about the door either, it was cruel and you didn't deserve it, I'm sorry. I waited for the hidden twist. I've been thinking all week, she continued, and yes, you were right. I was flirting. It was hard to admit because I felt guilty, but yes, I was, and I'm sorry, I don't want to lose you because of this. It was the perfect speech, exactly the kind of apology any therapist would recommend, which ironically made it even less believable. All right, I replied. She blinked. All right, that's it? Yes, you said you were wrong and I heard you. All right then, we're good. Are we? Well, I apologized, I acknowledged I was wrong, I said I'd do better, and I said all right. She leaned back in the chair, trying to read me. You don't believe me, do you? I took a deep breath before answering, trying to keep my tone steady and not let irritation take over. The air felt heavy between us, filled with unspoken words and hidden resentments. I didn't say that, I repeated calmly, though inside I was exhausted. But it doesn't matter, whatever we try to clarify always ends up distorted. Eleanor frowned immediately, as if the mere idea that her actions weren't perfect affected her more than she wanted to admit. You don't understand, she muttered angrily, as if I were the obstacle instead of reality itself. I heard you, I replied with a slight shrug. You expressed what you wanted to say, I received it, I processed it, I don't know what you expect now. She crossed her arms, moving with that mix of anxiety and authority she used whenever she wanted to win an argument without actually having any solid reasoning. I want us to overcome this problem, Eleanor insisted, pronouncing each word like a command disguised as a reasonable request. And what exactly am I supposed to be forgiven for? I asked firmly, containing my frustration. You were the one who left me alone at a work event after telling me to leave. I literally did exactly that, leave, just as you asked. I saw a small twitch tremble under her right eye. It was subtle, but I had seen it before, an unmistakable sign that she was starting to lose control of the conversation. Very well then, she replied, hardening her voice like someone trying to reclaim lost ground. If you don't want to accept my apology, that's your problem. I'm trying to fix this, and you're just making everything harder. I did accept it, I reminded her, crossing my arms without breaking eye contact. I want you to truly accept it, she demanded, stepping closer to me as if proximity strengthened her argument. And how exactly are you supposed to know whether I am or not? Suddenly she stood up from the chair, moving with that impulsive abruptness that always appeared when she couldn't control the script of a discussion. The frustration slipped out in an abrupt gesture. Because you're acting sarcastic and strange, she accused. You behave as if everything were a game, as if you were doing it on purpose. I leaned back slightly in my seat without losing my calm. No, I'm not playing anything, Eleanor. You apologized, I said fine. I didn't add more because there was nothing more to say. She stared at me for a long moment with that tense silence she used whenever she tried to figure out whether she was losing control. In the end she simply turned on her heels and walked out of the room without bothering to respond. I heard her steps going up the stairs and then the slam of the bedroom door. Just a few seconds, but in that brief moment lay the entire weight of what had been dragging on for months. In the days that followed, Eleanor seemed to transform into the perfect version of a repentant wife, an exact caricature of what one would expect to see in a movie where someone tries to repair a broken marriage. She cooked my favorite dishes with almost exaggerated dedication, avoided any kind of friction, spoke softly, even mentioned planning a weekend trip to Sedona to reconnect. Every gesture was calculated to the millimeter. She became more affectionate than usual, brushed my arm when we talked, laughed with extra enthusiasm at my comments, showed an almost theatrical attentiveness, as if she were trying to recreate the idealized version of our first year together. Every little detail seemed like part of a plan. It took me a few days to realize that this perfection was exactly what made it suspicious. Only when one observes from a distance can one understand it. Once you see how a trick works, it becomes impossible to be fooled by it again. So I did what anyone would do who, even if not yet saying it out loud, understands that their marriage is dying. I took silent precautions. In our joint account we had about $47,000. I didn't move anything drastic or sudden, I knew that was the fastest way to raise suspicions. I began with small, almost insignificant transfers. First 3,000, then 2,500, days later another 3,200, and I continued like that, always discrete amounts, into a personal account she knew nothing about. I created a spreadsheet where I recorded every movement with date, time, and description. I saved every receipt, every capture, every document. I wanted everything to be completely legal, traceable, impeccable. I wanted to protect myself. Within a period of 2 weeks, I had already transferred $28,000, leaving enough in the joint account for regular expenses so as not to spark curiosity. Eleanor, as always, barely checked the bank balance once a month, just a superficial glance and nothing more. At the same time, I began gathering and backing up important documents, bank statements, the house deed, the car titles, insurance policies, our employment contracts. I organized everything into digital and physical folders and took the printed copies to my brother's house, who asked no questions but understood it was better not to. I also started a timeline where I wrote down every strange behavior from Eleanor since June, unexplained delays, weak excuses, changes in her routine, those sudden work meetings that appeared out of nowhere. Details that, in the moment, seemed unrelated, but once placed in chronological order began to lose their disguise. And then one Tuesday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after the cursed barbecue where everything began, I received an email that froze my blood. Subject: about your wife and my husband. The notification arrived at 2:30 in the afternoon. I stopped in my tracks when I saw the sender's name, Victoria Carter, wife of Caillou Carter, the man Eleanor always described as her marketing coworker, someone with whom she supposedly only shared meetings and projects. I opened the email with a pulse that was already starting to quicken. Victoria explained that perhaps I didn't know who she was, but she was married to Caillou, and that the night before she had found something on her husband's iPad that I urgently needed to see. She said she understood how painful it would be to read it, that it hadn't been easy for her either, but that she had a moral duty to send me that information. She ended the message with a phone number. I called her without thinking. She answered almost instantly, as if she had been waiting for my call. "Are you Eleanor's husband?" she asked with a firm voice but a hidden tremor. "Yes, I'm Oliver." "What exactly is happening?" "I'm Victoria, Kaylu's wife, or soon ex-wife," she said, biting the words with contained rage. "I'm going to send you some screenshots. I need you to look at all of them, then we'll talk." She hung up without saying goodbye. 5 seconds later my phone vibrated. I opened the first image. It was a screenshot of a chat, and at the top clearly was Eleanor's number. The message was dated August 10th, exactly 1 week before the barbecue. Eleanor wrote, "Last night was incredible, I can't stop thinking about it, it makes me feel things I haven't felt in years." Caillou replied, "Same here, when are we repeating it this weekend?" Eleanor wrote, "Friday works, same place, I'll tell him I have to work late." My breathing grew heavy, a sharp pain hit the pit of my stomach. I slid to the next screenshot. Caillou wrote, "Your husband suspects something." Eleanor answered, "He's been acting weird lately, asking questions, but he's too passive to do anything, I've got him trained, haha." I kept scrolling, each message pushing the knife a little deeper. Plans to meet at a hotel in Scottsdale, comments about how boring I was, jokes from both of them about how easy it was to fool Victoria and me. Then the line appeared that cut through me like a gunshot. Eleanor wrote, "Yesterday he asked if everything was okay, I told him he was paranoid and needed to trust me more." Caillou answered, "And he believed it." Eleanor replied, "Yes, he even apologized to me, ha ha ha." Caillou added, "That guy is a doormat, my wife would have thrown me out of the house." Eleanor said, "That's why I married someone safe, he'll never leave." My whole body went numb. It felt like I was reading about someone else, not myself, but the details were too specific. They matched her schedule, her excuses, the nights she came home late because of the campaign. There were messages from June to August, always Tuesdays and Thursdays, the days she said she had to work late. Yes, even I had prepared her lunch on several of those mornings, believing she had a hard day ahead. I called Victoria again. "Have you reviewed everything?" she asked directly. "Yes," I answered, hearing my voice come out rougher than usual. "How did you find this?" She explained that Caillou often left the iPad in the kitchen. The previous night she had wanted to look up a recipe, saw the messaging app open, and immediately recognized Eleanor's name. The preview of the message was so obvious she couldn't ignore it. She opened the chat and read everything. "Does he know you found out?" I asked. "Of course," she replied with steel in her voice. I confronted him, he denied it first, then admitted it, then tried to minimize it, the usual. "Eleanor, I don't know if she knows that I know. Caillou, on the other hand, is begging me not to tell you anything." I told him it was too late. "You deserve to know the truth about the person you sleep next to." "Thank you for telling me," I murmured, feeling a massive weight in my chest. "I'm filing for divorce today," she added without hesitation, "I already contacted a lawyer. I thought you should have all this before making your decisions." We talked for about 30 minutes. She sent me absolutely everything, full message threads, images, a voicemail, all organized by date in a folder she had prepared during the night while Caillou slept. When we hung up, I remained inside the car parked in the basement of the building. I don't know how much time passed exactly, but the clock marked 40 minutes when I finally reacted. I had been staring at the screen without moving, reviewing the messages again and again. The dates matched, the schedules matched, the excuses matched, every detail fit together like a gear without gaps. The conclusion was so clear it was terrifying, everything was real, and Eleanor had been laughing at me while betraying me. Her constant distance, her guarded attitude, and the way she became defensive every time I tried to talk to her had become too obvious. And although for weeks I tried convincing myself I was exaggerating, in that moment there was no room for doubt. I knew exactly what I had to do. I drove straight to a lawyer's office, chose one with good reviews, and called to request an urgent consultation for a divorce process. The receptionist managed to squeeze me in at 5 in the afternoon. The attorney, Malcolm, was a man in his mid-50s wearing a flawless suit and sitting in a spacious office overlooking the city. He listened without interrupting while I explained every detail and examined the evidence with slow, deliberate nods. Arizona is a no-fault divorce state, he explained, which means infidelity does not directly alter the process, but it does have weight in how assets are divided and of course it influences public perception. I want to file immediately, I said, and I want her to be served at her job. He raised an eyebrow. At her job? She humiliated me in front of everyone at her company event, I replied. I want her to feel a bit of the same. The attorney leaned back, evaluating me. It is completely legal to serve her there, but it is a forceful gesture. If that is the message you want to send, I can arrange it. We spent 3 hours reviewing everything, joint accounts, the house, the cars, the retirement funds. I showed him the spreadsheet with the money I had already moved as a precaution. He reviewed it carefully. Good decision, he commented. How fast can we file? By Thursday I can have the papers ready. The process server can deliver them that same Thursday afternoon. Perfect, make it Thursday around 3. Any special reason for that hour? That is when her department has the weekly meeting, everyone will be in the conference room, and she will be right in the middle when she receives the documents. The attorney gave a slight smile. I understand perfectly, let's do it. I left his office with a solid plan. On Tuesday and Wednesday, I behaved completely normally at home. Eleanor continued performing the role of the repentant wife. She prepared dinner both nights, asked about my day, tried to act as if nothing was happening. I responded naturally, watched shows with her, even let out a laugh when she said something funny, but inside I only heard the ticking clock approaching the decisive day. On Wednesday night she tried to get closer. I told her I was tired. I noticed a flash of frustration in her eyes, but she did not insist. She went to bed around 11. I stayed awake until 2 organizing more documents. On Thursday morning I left for work at 7:30. Eleanor was still asleep and I didn't wake her. At 2:40 in the afternoon, sitting in a cafe 3 blocks from my office, I received a message from the process server. Package delivered. The target looked like she had seen a ghost. At 3 o'clock, my phone began to ring. It was Eleanor. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. She tried again a few minutes later. I ignored it again. By 3:30 I had 11 missed calls and 7 voicemails. I listened to them in order. The first one said, "Oliver, what did you do? What is this? Call me right now." The next one, "I can't believe you did this at my job, in front of everyone, my boss called me into his office, talked to me like an adult, this is insane, we can fix this, please call me." Then, "I know you're angry, but this is too much." And finally, "Fine, do whatever you want, you're making a huge mistake." I didn't call back. Instead, I sent a text message, "Your things will be on the porch on Sunday. Tomorrow I change the locks." Immediately my phone started ringing again. I declined the call. Then came the texts, one after another. I silenced the phone and ordered another coffee. When I left the cafe, I had received 43 messages and 19 calls. When I arrived home around 6, I noticed Eleanor's car in the driveway. On the step was the old key and a note from my brother-in-law, whom I had asked to change the locks. All set, new keys in the mailbox. I took them and went inside. She was sitting on the sofa with swollen eyes and smeared makeup. She stood as soon as she saw me. "We need to talk." I didn't respond. "You need to leave. This house is mine too." "Not anymore. The lawyer filed a motion for exclusive use. You will get your share when we finish the process. Until then, you are trespassing on private property." Her mouth fell open. "You can't do that." "I already did. You have 5 minutes to grab the basics for tonight. The rest will be on the porch Sunday." "Oliver, please." "No. Take your things, leave the key, and go." She stared at me, not knowing what to say, then finally murmured, "I made a mistake, a huge mistake, but we can fix it. Many couples do. You were with him 3 months. You lied to my face. You said I was boring. You laughed about how easy it was to hide everything. And when I caught you flirting with him, you told me to leave. There is nothing to fix." Her face drained of color. "How? Who told you that?" It doesn't matter. I know everything. Hotels, dates, messages, every detail. So stop the performance. She began to cry. I'm so sorry, I don't know what I was thinking. You have 4 minutes, Eleanor. 4 minutes or I call the police. She went upstairs and came back 10 minutes later with a travel bag and her work laptop. She stopped at the door. I love you. I know you don't believe it now, but I love you and I'm going to fight for us. The papers are already filed. Still, there is always a way to repair things. Your chance to avoid all of this was not cheating. Your chance was not lying to me. You chose to destroy this. Now please leave. Eleanor walked out and stayed in her car for 15 minutes crying before starting the engine and driving away. The phone began ringing barely 30 seconds after I sent the filing. I hadn't even finished putting away the documents when I saw Sophie's name lighting up the screen. I took a deep breath before answering. I already knew the tone she would use. Her voice exploded like a gunshot. What did you do, Oliver? Tell me this is a joke. She sounded hysterical, almost as if she were the one directly affected. I filed for divorce, I replied with absolute calm. Eleanor had an affair for 3 months. That's it. Do you need any other detail? You served her at work, in front of everyone. What were you thinking? That's too cruel. I laughed in disbelief. Cruel? Let me tell you what cruel is. Sleeping with a coworker while your husband believes you're staying late for a project. Cruel is manipulating him when he begins to notice something is wrong, telling him he's paranoid, that he's imagining things. That is cruelty in its purest form. You're acting out of spite, she argued, that won't lead you anywhere good. She humiliated me first, and I'm simply taking back the dignity I lost by enduring her double life. If she's devastated as you say, good. Maybe now she'll understand what she caused. Sophie stayed silent for a long moment as if searching for something that could make me change my mind, but she found nothing. You're going to regret this, she threatened in a low voice. You won't be able to go back when this blows up even more. The only thing I regret is not leaving when I saw the first signs. Tell Eleanor that all communication must be through the lawyers and that she should not come back to the house. I didn't give her a chance to answer. I hung up and blocked her number. Minutes later, calls began pouring in. Hours later, the phone was still vibrating. Midnight arrived along with more messages. I didn't answer any. I ordered food, put on a random game to distract myself, and went to bed around 11. And surprisingly, I slept better than I had in a long time. No nightmares, no anxiety, no tossing and turning. It was the deepest rest I had had in months. On Friday morning, while eating breakfast, I received the first message from a mutual friend. That's when I knew the chaos had already spread through the entire company where Eleanor worked. It didn't surprise me, those things always spread like wildfire. He told me that Victoria had filed for divorce from Carter on the exact same day Eleanor received the papers, and that both being served at their workplace created the kind of situation one imagines: stares, whispers, forwarded emails, improvised meetings in closed offices. The department they belonged to organized an emergency meeting with Carter, Eleanor, and Human Resources. According to what I was told, the tension in that room could be felt even from the hallway. The outcome was immediate. Carter was suspended from his duties. Eleanor, for her part, managed to keep her position only because the extramarital affair happened outside of work hours, but her reputation was shattered. By that same afternoon, everyone already knew. There wasn't a single corner of the company where her name wasn't being mentioned. Eleanor, who until recently had been considered a model employee, became the woman who cheated on her husband with a married coworker, and every day the nickname became crueler. When I turned my phone back on after ignoring it all night, I had 53 missed calls, most from Eleanor, several from her family, and one from an unknown number that turned out to be Eleanor's boss, practically begging me not to talk about the issue online or with other employees. I didn't even bother replying. The only call I made was to Bernard, Eleanor's father, who had tried contacting me 3 times. "Is it true?" he asked as soon as he answered. "Did you really file for divorce?" "Yes." "I can't blame you," he said, his tone tired and resigned. "Eleanor called me crying last night, then Sophie wrote early this morning saying you were overreacting." I imagine the truth is somewhere between both versions, but I'm inclined to think you're the one telling the truth. I have proof of the 3 months, I replied without emotion. Messages, records, receipts. He let out a long, deep sigh filled with paternal disappointment. Her mother has defended her all week. This is going to destroy her when she sees the evidence. She's no longer my responsibility, I said firmly. I know, and I won't criticize you for anything. My daughter made wrong decisions, and now she has to deal with the consequences. Thank you for understanding. We hung up shortly after. It was the first conversation of the day that didn't end in yelling or accusations directed at me. Around noon I received a message from Harriet, a close friend who had always been more honest than the others. They fired Coworker this morning. Your chance to avoid all of this was not cheating. Your chance was not lying to me. You chose to destroy this. Now please leave. Eleanor walked out, then stayed inside her car for 15 minutes crying before turning on the engine and driving away. The phone began ringing barely 30 seconds after I submitted the filing. I hadn't even finished putting the documents away when Sophie's name lit up the screen. I inhaled deeply before answering, already knowing the tone she would use. Her voice exploded like a gunshot. What did you do, Oliver? Tell me this is a joke. She sounded hysterical, almost as if she were the one directly affected. I requested the divorce, I answered with absolute calm. Eleanor had an affair for 3 months. That's it. Do you need any other detail? You served her at work, in front of everyone. What were you thinking? That's too cruel. I laughed in disbelief. Cruel? Let me tell you what cruel is. Sleeping with a coworker while your husband believes you are staying late because of a project. Cruel is manipulating him when he begins to notice something is wrong, telling him he is paranoid, that he is imagining things. That is cruelty in its purest form. You're acting out of spite, she said, that won't lead to anything good. She humiliated me first, and I am simply reclaiming the dignity I lost by enduring her double life. If she is devastated, as you say, good. Maybe now she'll understand what she caused. Sophie fell silent for a long moment, as if searching for something that could make me change my mind, but she found nothing. Eleanor, you are going to regret this, she threatened in a low voice. You won't be able to go back when this gets worse. The only thing I regret is not leaving when I saw the first signs. Tell Eleanor that all communication must go through the lawyers and that she must not return to the house. I hung up without giving her the chance to respond and blocked her number. Minutes later, calls began pouring in. Hours later, the phone was still vibrating. Midnight came, along with more messages. I didn't reply to any of them. I ordered food, put on some random game to distract myself, and went to bed around 11. Surprisingly, I slept better than I had in months, no nightmares, no anxiety, no tossing and turning. It was the deepest rest I had had in a long time. On Friday morning, while having breakfast, I received the first message from a mutual friend. That's when I knew the chaos had already spread throughout the entire company where Eleanor worked. It didn't surprise me, those things always spread like wildfire. He told me that Victoria had filed for divorce from Coworker on the exact same day Eleanor received the papers, and that both being served at their workplace created the kind of situation one imagines: looks, whispers, forwarded emails, and improvised meetings in closed offices. Their department organized an emergency meeting with Coworker, Eleanor, and Human Resources. The tension inside that room, I was told, could be felt even from the hallway. The result was immediate: Coworker was fired from his job. Eleanor, on the other hand, managed to keep her position only because the affair happened outside of work hours, but the price was enormous. Within the company she was marked. No one wanted to collaborate with her on new projects, lunch invitations disappeared, and people who used to be friendly suddenly had urgent meetings every time she approached. A former coworker told me that Eleanor tried to do damage control, saying it had all been a misunderstanding, that I had exaggerated, and that the separation had been mutual. But Victoria had already spoken to some people, and the messages along with the screenshots had circulated. It was difficult to disguise 3 months of hotel meetings as a simple communication error. She tried to transfer to another department, but was denied, so she ended up attending every day a workplace where everyone knew exactly what she had done. 4 months after filing the divorce, I received the email. The subject was clear: process completed, you are officially divorced, congratulations on your new beginning. That night, I treated myself to dinner at a nice restaurant. I ordered a good cut of steak, sat at the bar, and watched a basketball game. For the first time in a long while, I could breathe without feeling pressure in my chest. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday around 7 in the evening, someone knocked on the door of my new apartment. I had moved downtown to a one-bedroom place with huge windows, a space with no memories, a fresh start. I looked through the peephole and saw Eleanor. For a moment I considered not opening, but I finally slid the latch aside. I didn't invite her in. "What do you want?" I asked. She looked different, thinner, exhausted, aged in a way that had nothing to do with time. The confidence she had once shown at a barbecue no longer existed. "I needed to talk to you," she said quietly. "The divorce is final, there is nothing left to discuss." "I know, I didn't come to change that, I just need to say some things." "5 minutes, can I come in?" Against all common sense, I stepped aside. She entered and looked around the room. "Nice place," she murmured, then turned to me. "I miss you." I didn't respond, I simply waited. "I know you probably don't believe me, but it's the truth. I miss you, us, what we were before I ruined everything." "Your way of showing it was interesting," I replied. She shuddered. "I made a huge mistake, I know. I ruined the best thing I had by being selfish and acting without thinking. I've spent 4 months going over every detail." "Good for you," I said without emotion. "I lost my job," she blurted out, "or I'm about to. They're downsizing the marketing department, and I'm the first on the list. Everyone knows it's because of what happened. Not my problem." "I know, I'm not here asking you to fix it. I just want you to understand I've already paid for what I did." "Everything collapsed." "Everything collapsed because you pushed it," I replied. "I know," she whispered as tears filled her eyes. "I'm not asking for pity, I just want to know if there's any possibility of trying again, starting over." "I've learned the lesson, Oliver. I've changed." I looked at her for a long moment but didn't respond. "It wasn't a mistake, you cheated, and the worst part wasn't even that. You made me believe I was imagining things. You treated me like a paranoid jealous man when I was right. That showed me who you are when you're afraid." "That wasn't my intention," she insisted. "It was exactly your intention," I interrupted. "You wanted me to feel unstable so you could keep playing 2 roles, but it didn't work out as you planned. I took the door you offered me, and now you have to deal with the result." Tears were already streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, I would give anything to undo it. You regret being caught, you regret the consequences, but that doesn't change what you did nor make me want you back." "That's not fair," she murmured. I walked to the front door and opened it. "Remember when you told me the door was right there?" I asked. "Well, here it is again. Use it." She stood still, tears falling uncontrollably. "I won't leave," she whispered. "Yes, you will, now." She began walking slowly toward the exit, stopping in the doorway. She turned back toward me. "I love you, even if you don't believe it." "No, you don't love me. You're terrified of being alone. So take your apologies and your love and take them out of my life." She opened her mouth to speak again, but I didn't give her the chance. I pushed the door firmly and closed it before she could say another word. I stayed there with my hand pressed against the wood, breathing slowly, waiting to hear her footsteps moving away. She didn't move at first. The silent pause on the other side felt long, almost uncomfortable. I looked through the peephole. Eleanor was standing in the hallway, motionless, staring at the carpet as if trying to find an explanation that would never come. After a minute, I saw her bring her hands to her face, her shoulders shook. I couldn't hear her, but her sobs were obvious. She stayed like that for a long while, unable to take a step, as if the weight of what she had caused had finally fallen on her. When she finally began to move, she did so with a slowness that seemed unbreakable. She turned around and walked toward the elevator without looking back. She waited there alone with her head bowed. When the doors opened, she stepped inside and disappeared from my sight. That was the last time I ever saw her. 4 months have passed since that day, and the silence has been absolute. She hasn't tried to call me or send me messages. Through some acquaintances I learned she eventually lost her job, packed everything she could, and moved to Denver to stay with an old college friend. I also heard she tried contacting Caillou Carter, but he blocked her immediately. Ironically, they both ruined their lives for a fleeting romance that wasn't even strong enough to survive once the world came crashing down on them. No, I don't feel resentment, nor satisfaction. Only a calm clarity. Her life took a direction that no longer belongs to me. I, on the other hand, found exactly what I needed. I sold my share of the house where I once tried to build a future with her and bought a smaller place in Scottsdale, 2 bedrooms, a modest pool, and a mixed-breed dog I adopted a few weeks ago. He can't fetch a ball, but he sleeps beside me quietly, and honestly that's more than I need. Today my life is different, quiet, stable. Sometimes I'm surprised by how well I sleep, by how light the house feels when there's no need to analyze every gesture or every explanation. I suppose freedom sometimes arrives in ways one doesn't expect. And although I don't wish Eleanor harm, I'm glad her story is no longer connected to mine. She follows her path, I follow mine, and for the first time in a long time, I am at peace.